There are two things that impacts family life significantly. One of them is credit history, and then the other one is criminal history. So these two have financial implications on people's life, and also have certain legal implication as well. Most of the situations, people are straightforward, and then they can share every details of their life before they plan to make a decision to live together as a spouse. But sometimes, in really rare cases, people are not really straightforward, so they may not share those information related to their credit history, and also information related to their criminal history in case they have. But sometimes people didn't know that having criminal history or having really bad credit impacts their family life, or at least they thought so. What happens is, especially the criminal history depends on the level of offense and charges and convictions, and some of those past convictions in offenses cause significant problems, especially when it is related to immigration applications. There are really few situations, not too many, that you don't be scared, but really few situations we have that a sponsor from Canada went outside, got married. Some of them, they have 2-3 children because they stayed longer, 3-4 years, 5 years. Now they come back to Canada and they want to sponsor their wife and children. Of course, their children are Canadian citizen because the father or the mother is citizen of Canada before they were born, so they can get their Canadian citizenship. But what happens is the spouse, whether a spouse is a gentleman or a lady, cannot be sponsored, because the sponsor in Canada had the types of criminal offenses that he or she is not eligible to be a sponsor. Then what happens is the spouse will be left outside of Canada, and it is really painful for both of them. I came across sponsors who were, seemed pure innocent. They have never thought that the convictions they had many years ago will still prevent them from sponsoring their spouses. And the same way is the opposite. So we have Canadians who went outside and got married, and now they sponsored the spouse from outside of Canada. Because the spouses have certain types of convictions outside of Canada, now they cannot come to Canada. They cannot be sponsored. They are not eligible to come to Canada. So you see this criminal charges or convictions that people have, whether inside Canada or outside of Canada, can prevent especially the families to be reunited. And it is heartbreaking to know people end up in this situation. But I wish there has been a system in place that people have to provide criminal record check before they decide to get married, so that they know their future. It doesn't mean that if somebody has certain offenses, you cannot get married. You can still get married, but still, if you know from get-go, it is much easier to handle, and it helps you to plan your life. Let's say if the sponsor is from Canada, and he knows that he is not eligible to sponsor, but you still, if you want to get married and you plan to live outside of Canada, that's fair, that's good enough. Or the applicant who is outside of Canada and who has certain conviction, criminal history that prevents him or her to come to Canada, but still you can plan it, your life accordingly. But if you plan to move to Canada, you get married, everything goes really well, and then you hear the surprise of your life, then that's difficult. So this kind of problems, legal challenges, can be mitigated if criminal record check has been done as part of the marriage process before you tie the knot. I'm hoping that those who have influence in family law, and those who have the ability to change certain rules, make criminal record check as part of requirement of a marriage, like a part of requirement before the couples or the people get married and become a couple. So this is about criminal history. So the other one is credit history. So credit history has its own, this one has more financial implications as compared to legal implications. It has financial implications on family's life. For instance, credit history is checked by most of the institutions through FICO score. So FICO score, the minimum is 300 and the maximum is 850, let's say. Sometimes it goes to 900, but 850 is the popular one. And if it will be good to know your partners or your future spouses, that how he or she does in terms of scoring FICO scores. That also will help you to make an informed decision. FICO score shows the person's skills and capacity and previous behavior in terms of loan payments, debt payments, and in terms of paying their cell phone bills, electricity, water, or any types of loans or debt that they have. So it shows how consistent the person was in the past in terms of this bill payments, and how much the capacity they have right now to pay certain loans and debts, and the types of loans that they have, whether it is a student loan, it is auto finance, is it mortgage of the house, or is it line of credit, or it is credit card statements that the person could not pay credit card for months and months, and now he or she is dealing with revolving interest. And those are some of the things that FICO score shows whether the person's credit history is good and whether the person's capacity is good or not. So the excellent or the good score, FICO score is 700 and above. If somebody scores 600, is so-so, but below 600 is considered poor scores, and often lenders are hesitant to pay loan. So how this impacts the family life? It impacts significantly if you have poor FICO score. I'll give you a quick example. Is the if you want to get $500,000 mortgage, and if you have 700 FICO score and above, you will get, suppose, 3% interest rate. But if your FICO score is not good enough and it is struggles, sometimes financial institutions doesn't give you the mortgage, and in case they give, they will ask you for a higher interest rate. For instance, they will ask you to pay 5% instead of 3%. So what happens is, paying 5% interest rate, you can still get the mortgage, but you pay a lot more interest in the long run. For instance, for $500,000 mortgage, 3% interest rate will be $15,000 per year, and 5% interest rate will be $25,000 per year. Now, what happens in the long run, suppose in 10 years, though it will be a little bit slightly different, because in 10 years the amount of money will be lower. You might pay a certain amount of 500,000, but I'm just giving you an example that in 10 years, if you have good credit history and you got with 3% interest, you will pay $150,000 interest for $500,000 mortgage. But if your FICO score suffers and it is weak, then if you get 5% interest rate in 10 years, you will pay $250,000 interest for $500,000 mortgage. Now you see that there is $100,000 difference between having a good and not satisfactory FICO score. So by the end of the day, your family, in case both of you or one of you struggles and do not have a good FICO score, then the family will be paying $100,000 extra as compared to someone who has excellent FICO score. Now, see, these things, it impacts in mortgage, and it impacts in auto finances, it impacts on any types of loans or anything that you will get on interest. It impacts your life, so you have to pay extra and additional money as compared to ordinary market rate. And these things have significant financial implications. So it impacts your life, and knowing it ahead of time, it will be helpful to make an informed decisions. So that's why criminal record history check is important to know, and credit history, especially knowing what is the FICO score of your future wife or husband. It really helps you in the long run to make a proper and informed decision.